Good morning. It's August 17th, and this is to my liberal friends. Well, I'm up here in the mountains of northern Utah today, and it sure is nice. The question I have today is how many indictments can Donald Trump accumulate on his way to the nomination? The count is up to 4 now, and some of them are pure politics, and at least one, in my opinion, has some legs and merit. But Trump does himself no favors when he attacks the judges and the prosecutors in some very unsavory terms. It should be beneath him to play the racist card, but in Trump's mind, there is nothing that is out of bounds when he goes on the attack. Looking at the cases that Trump is facing, you have to examine them and what they could mean to him legally. The one in New York is about him paying hush money to Stormy Daniels. It is the least of his worries in my mind. This is a state case, and the case hinges on the state being able to prove that Trump paid Stormy Daniels to be quiet about any sexual encounter they have had so as not to harm his political campaign. And that's an important distinction. Trump will argue that he was trying to shield this information from his wife so as not to harm his marriage. It'd be difficult for the prosecutor to convince a jury that it was all about the campaign. If we all remember back in the Clinton administration, it became apparent that he had lied about his involvement with Monica Lewinsky. And liberals and Democrats excused his lying by saying anyone would do that to avoid a confrontation with his wife. And remember, his wife was Hillary Clinton, so he might have had good reason not to want her to find out. The second case, in order of importance, is the federal case being brought by Jack Smith in Washington, D.C. Trump faces 4 charges in this indictment: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. The indictment lists 6 unnamed co-conspirators. Prosecutors allege that they had enlisted to assist Trump in his criminal efforts to overturn the election and retain power. Now, the most interesting facet of this case is the unnamed co-conspirators. Smith will have to prove that Trump knew he was lying when he made his statements about election fraud. He will have to prove that Trump knew there was no fraud but tried to overturn the election anyway. I suspect that Smith is hoping that one of these unnamed co-conspirators will flip to save themselves and give him some direct evidence that Trump knew, even privately admitted, that he had lost the election. There was no real evidence of fraud to overturn the results. In my rankings, I put the Georgia case third. This case centers around the famous phone call from Trump to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, where Trump urged him to look at the election and alleged there were voter fraud, and he wanted him to find 11,780 votes needed to reverse the results in Georgia. The issue here is, was Trump asking him to make up votes, or was he asking him to look at the results and find if there was sufficient evidence of fraud to basically reverse the 11,000 plus margin that Biden had won Georgia with? The 98-page indictment lists 41 total counts, including 13 against Trump, and notes there are 30 unindicted co-conspirators again. The indictment describes several schemes allegedly used by Trump and his co-conspirators to attempt to reverse this electoral loss, including making false statements to state legislatures and top state officials, creating fake electoral college documents and recruiting supporters to cast false votes at the Georgia Capitol, harassing Fulton County election worker Ruby Freeman, and corruptly soliciting senior Justice Department officials and then Vice President Mike Pence. That's a lot of charges, and some of them will be very difficult to make. It also accuses members of the enterprise of stealing data, including ballot images, voting equipment software, and personal voter information from Coffee County, Georgia, and making false statements to government investigators. Now, Trump has openly disparaged this case and correctly, in my opinion, asked a pertinent question. Why didn't they bring this case 2.5 years ago? He points out they're bringing these charges in the middle of his current campaign. Now, the prosecutor rely on Georgia statutes, which are much broader than federal statutes when it comes to making false statements. But sitting out there is the appeal that will most surely come if there is a conviction, and the Supreme Court has already addressed the issue of politicians making false statements in the Alvarez case. My guess is they would ultimately overturn any conviction. The fourth and final case, the one where, in my opinion, Trump faces the most legal danger, is the classified documents case where he took and stored documents at Mar-a-Lago. This is another case being brought by the special counsel Jack Smith. The indictment accuses Trump of storing boxes containing classified documents in various locations at the Mar-a-Lago Club, including in a ballroom, a bathroom and shower, an office space, his bedroom, and a storage room. End quote. Trump lives at Mar-a-Lago, a private Palm Beach, Florida country club owned by his company. The indictment also alleges conspiracy to obstruct justice, corruptly concealing a document or record, a scheme to conceal, and making false statements and representations. Now, Trump has argued that he had the power to declassify those documents just by thinking it. Well, that's not going to hold up in court because there's a clear procedure for declassifying documents, and just thinking it is not included in that procedure. He's also on record as discussing at least one of these documents with reporters. He bragged, I know you're surprised about Trump bragging, about having one that was prepared for him by DOD about invading Iran. Now, none of these cases will deter Donald Trump from running for the Republican nomination, and in many ways it is only solidifying his support among his core cadre. One woman in an interview in Iowa said she was voting for the candidate with the most indictments. Well, next week is the first Republican debate, and it will be interesting if Trump decides to participate. You can be sure some of the other candidates will bring up the multiple indictments. How Trump responds will be interesting. I believe he will fire back and call all of them a political witch hunt. He will be right about some of them, but the classified documents case might come back to bite him in the end. One final thought on all this. This election seems to be headed for a rematch of 2020, and both candidates have legal issues. Trump's are his own, and Biden's stem from his son's activities and the possibility that Biden actually participated in those business dealings. But no matter who wins, you can be sure that pardons will be on their minds. Trump would pardon himself, and Biden will pardon his son. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe or recommend it to your friends.